Welcome, everybody. Tonight we have an audience at Nordia House and an audience online. And welcome to the opening reception of the Sámi Dreams exhibit and artist talk. And we're from Nordia House tonight, and Nordia House is a cultural center and the home of Nordic Northwest. We're a nonprofit organization focused on Nordic culture and the 5 Nordic nations of Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden. And during this pandemic and afterwards, we'll be doing more programming at Nordia House and having a combination of some events that you can join us live at Nordia House or online. So I'm going to introduce Trisha Danforth, and Trisha is our program and exhibit coordinator, and she'll introduce the artist tonight.
Okay. Oh, yes. Okay, well, hello, everyone. I'm Trisha Danforth, and we are joined from St. Louis, as I mentioned before, with Randall Hyman. There is a power outage, so that's why for online and for the people in here, it's a little dark there. So that's the reason, but we're so grateful that Randall was able to join us. I'm sure all of you know that Randall is the photographer and journalist that is the mastermind behind our Sámi Dreams exhibit here at Nordia House. Randall is a photographer and a writer who's traveled around the world on magazine assignments for nearly 40 years, covering natural history and travel topics. His work has been featured in many publications, including the Smithsonian and National Geographic Traveler. So I want to welcome Randall and thank you so much for joining us through these interesting days that you have had and the interesting last few hours too.
Well, hello everyone. I apologize for the atmospherics, but we had a huge storm that took out all of our electricity, and then apparently my modem just fried, even though I had it on a uninterrupted power supply. So let's go with the atmospherics and pretend we're in Norway with lefse being baked in the oven and candles burning.
So Randall, I have a few questions, and then on YouTube, we're live on YouTube as well. We have some people that might be asking questions, and I'll see those, and I'll be able to ask them to you and to all of the people in the audience. And then, of course, you all on YouTube will be able to have your questions answered. And then at the end of kind of Randall and I's conversation, we'll be turning the camera towards you, the live audience, and you'll be able to ask all of your questions. And we'll pass the microphone around, and we'll have people raise your hands. So just get your questions ready and ready to get them answered by Randall. So first, Randall, I kind of wanted you just to talk about the exhibit and how did it get started?
Yeah, well, I was. I'll do the short story and not go way back, but let's just start with 2013. I spent 4 months in the Arctic as a Fulbright scholar, and up at Svalbard in northern Norway. And then I was so intrigued by the issues at hand of climate change and scientific research that was going on that I went back. I was awarded the Alicia Patterson Foundation Fellowship, which is America's oldest writing journalism fellowship, and it's a full year, and they supported me for a year to go back to the Arctic. And while I was there, what I saw was that, polar bears have a lot of voice when it comes to climate change, but guess what? The people who live in the Arctic don't have as much voice. They're not being heard as well. And specifically, that would be the Sámi people of northern Norway. And I thought this really, as a journalist, deserved, it was a story that deserved telling. And so I, after many different avenues being tried, I had this crazy idea that I wanted to go back and tell the story of the Sámi by having them tell their oral histories, but also artistically, I wanted the portraits to be very, very different than anything I have ever seen before. I carried a background with me across northern Norway, a photo background, a single photo light with a special lighting dome, And whether it was a frozen lake or a snowstorm or a 97-year-old woman's sitting room, I set up my studio then and there, and I could have the person sit in front of the black background in order to isolate them. And I hope that's what you'll see at the exhibit, and you see in this exhibit photo behind me, is that I tried to isolate them so that they look right into your eyes as you hear them speaking to you. If you scan it with the QR code and listen on your cell phone, the QR code is at the bottom of each photo ID below each photo. And hear them talk directly to you. You don't hear me asking questions. You just hear them telling their story. And they're isolated on this black background that then leads into their natural environment, whether it be a frozen tundra or someone's kitchen or whatever. And I wanted to tell the story that way, to let them speak directly to the American audience. So that was the idea, and happily, the Norwegian Embassy, Royal Norwegian Embassy in Washington, and Norway House in Minneapolis, and some Norwegian entities, two universities got behind the whole project, plus Norway's Innovation Norway is their tourism board. And Hurtigruten, for those of you who are familiar with Norway, know that's the coastal cruise line. They all supported this, and I went back and I spent a month on this endeavor trying to capture these oral histories and these portraits.
Wow, thank you. When you were talking, your background does remind me a lot of your pieces, actually, where it's like very dark on one side and very light on the other. So maybe it was all ploy so that you could mimic your art, I think.
It was meant to be. Life imitates art.
So I'm wondering, how did you meet the subjects of your portraits? Like, what's the story there? How did you actually end up meeting all of these people?
Very, very different ways. When I'd been there in 2015, for Smithsonian Magazine, I covered what's called the Sámi Easter Festival. And I got to know some people there. So when I went back, they were kind enough to put me in touch, let's say, to network me with their friends and family. And once that ball started rolling with people all over Finnmark County, you might call it, although the name has changed. Sámi is what the Sámi people call it. And by the way, those of you who aren't familiar with Sámi people, we used to call them Laplanders. The Lapps, they don't really like that term. They call themselves Sámi. And that's how I connected, and I traveled all over Finnmark and did these portraits and did the recordings of oral histories.
Yeah. And what was it like? I wonder, how did you capture their audio? Was it something that you did when you were in person with all of them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I do their portraits, which depends on where you are. If the wind's blowing and your background's caught and it goes like a kite, these situations, much like right now, nature has its own ways with us. And so once the portrait sitting was over, if you'll call it a portrait sitting, once I had done those photos, then I had a very specialized audio equipment that captures your voices in a very intimate way. And I had a list, like you're doing now, Tricia. I had a list of questions, and I presented that to them. And I said, just talk. I'm not going to ask you questions. Address whatever you want to address, and talk about whatever you want to talk about. And so that's one of the unique things about the audio, is that they are talking to you. They kind of almost sometimes would go into a dreamlike state where they just talk, and they tell their story. And some of the stories were a bit sad, because some of the adults grew up like our Native American Indians. They were deprived of speaking their language in public schools, and they were considered second-class citizens. These things are changing, but there's still prejudice, as there still is in the United States, for Native Americans and African Americans. But they were second-class citizens, and they have their own parliaments now in Norway, Sweden, and Finland, and they broadcast in their own language. Well, there are several Sámi languages, but in Norway it's called Northern Sámi. So, yeah, that's the story of the audio.
Yeah, and I know that you met with two. I think that you referred to them as like more like political activists. And I'm wondering, like, what was that experience working with them versus some of the other people that you ended up meeting with as well?
Yeah, actually three. One is the president of the Sámi parliament, and so she's an activist in her own way. But the people whom I was referring to when I told you about that, one is very active, Sylvia Karlina Moska. You'll see her picture in the exhibit. She's got the ocean behind her. She's in Egakti, which is the regional costume, if you will, of it tells you where that person's from within Sápmi, depending on the colors of their outfit. It's like the Bunads of Norway. It tells you what region they're from. And so she's still very active in the United Nations and in the Sámi Parliament. And the other gentleman is the vice mayor of Karasjok, which is one of the major towns in Sápmi in Finnmark. And he's fighting the encroachment of mining interests that are wanting to, or they already have the permission to mine copper in that region, and unfortunately they have the permission to pour the slag directly into a pristine fjord, and that'll have a lot of heavy metals in it. And so it was very moving to talk to them because it reminded me so much of what I cover also. I covered in the Amazon. I'm covering now a story on the Navajo, or the Dene people, as they call themselves. And it's a lot of the same issues of land rights, indigenous rights, those sorts of things.
Yeah, I wonder, it sounds like a lot of what you've worked on has similar themes. I'm wondering if has that been something that you stumbled upon, or is that something that you set out to work on?
That's a really excellent question. I always, from the get-go, was interested in natural history. That's actually what I studied back in Indiana University, Bloomington, way back when. And then I combined that with courses in journalism and English and art, and because I wanted to really tell the story of man and his environment, or people in their environment, humankind in their environment. So many of my early stories in Iceland and in Brazil and Africa were about how we relate to our environment and how we are performing as caretakers of our environment. And so it was natural when I went to the Amazon that I became involved in covering indigenous rights there. And so, yeah, it's a running thread, not intentional, that if you're covering the environment, you're going to cover these people who are much tied to the land and have a vested interest in being good stewards of the environment.
Yeah. Do you have any specific artists, photographer, or otherwise that really inspire you?
Yeah, but I've been doing this for over.
Randall, can you hear us? Okay, we're just going to give Randall another second or two. Oh, Randall, are you there? I just want to say that Randall has been really lovely to work with, and so he, previous to the exhibit coming here, it was at Norway House, and as he mentioned, and the exhibit has been really well put together, and I know that I hope that you all got to see it. And Randall has been really great to work with, and especially tonight, he called me and he was like, I don't know, the power is out, and he's, you can see he's making it work, which is just very, very impressive overall.
Are we back together?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, I don't know what happened.
That's okay.
We had this big crash sound. We're getting lightning, so who knows what.
You know, Randall, this kind of stuff happens even when you're not in a power outage, so it's really okay.
Okay. Do you get any video of me now?
You could actually, if you want, you could actually turn your video off and it might make things go a little. We can see you. Yeah, we can see you.
Okay. She was saying I could turn the video off if it makes it better.
So I think.
All right, we're back together.
Yeah, I think we're back together. I think I'm gonna actually open it up to the audience. So if the audience wants to gather their thoughts and maybe think of a question, maybe just one question per person if anyone has any questions. And what we're gonna do is we're going to just swivel the camera towards the live audience. And then if you have a question, which I hope that you do, we'll pass a mic. So that you'll be able to ask your question to Randall.
Okay,
so if anyone
good.
from the audience has
Hello,
any
everybody.
specific questions. Oh, I see someone in the back is waving their hands. Randall, we can hear and see you. Can you see the audience?
I see the audience, but I probably won't hear their questions, so if you could relay them to me, that'd be great. Are you there?
Yep, we're here. We can hear you. So I think there was someone in the back that had a question.
Okay.
Oh, you're just waving? Thank you. I think someone really has a question. I got pranked, Randall. Okay, we have some real questions. They have a microphone too, Randall.
Okay.
Yes, hello. I was wondering what was your most poignant, most obscure, unusual happening during this odyssey of photography there?
Wow. The most poignant. Well, there were a lot of different things, but I think that the oral histories where people would kind of get very hushed and quiet and talk about having been persecuted, adults talk about how they felt ashamed of being Sámi and they were made to be ashamed of their language. And I think that was really heartrending. And I'd say those were poignant moments where a grown man was telling me that finally he can be proud to be Sámi, but he grew up being ashamed of it.
Thank you.
Hello, Randall. My name is Osa.
Hi.
I want to ask you, everyone in the portraits that you took is utterly beautiful. They seem to be dressed in their better than Sunday. Did you go for beauty on purpose?
That's a great question. No, that was really, that was up to them. I let them choose, and some of the more traditional people wanted to wear their so-called gakti or bunad, if you're familiar with the Norwegian version of that word. And that was their choice. I didn't tell them. So if you look, like the young people are wearing very casual clothes. Some of the herdsmen aren't wearing, they're wearing winter clothes. There's no particular, and of course I don't know what you're seeing at the gallery. I don't know how everything's hung, but there's 18 photos, and it ranges from people in the gakti, in the bunad, to, more casual clothes.
So thank you, Randall, for hanging in there with us tonight. And my question is about how were you funded for this particular project?
I had about 5 different funding agencies. One was the Royal Norwegian Embassy in Washington. They were probably the major contributor. Another, and actually, if you look at the panels in the exhibit, it gives credit to those different agencies. One is Northwest, which is sort of like our National Science Foundation of Scandinavia. It's all for all of Scandinavia. Another was Innovation Norway, which is basically the travel bureau of Norway. I hope I'm not forgetting. There's Innovation Norway, Royal Norwegian Embassy, Northwest. Hooterooten, the steamship company, the coastal steamer company. So I had support from quite a few agencies, and if I've forgotten anyone, it's on the panels. You can see that.
Yes, I have a question about the language. If the Sámi language is taught in the schools, it's such an important part of a culture, and if it's the first language or the second language that is taught.
Thank you for that wonderful question. Much like what Native Americans and First Nations people experienced in North America at Indian boarding schools, they were forbidden from speaking their language in the government boarding schools. It's very similar. And that continued until the early 1970s, fairly recent, historically speaking. And one of the women pictured in the exhibit, Edda Eriksson, so she's in a very elaborate bakti, her very elaborate unad or national costume. And she was awarded the King Olaf Award. For those of you who are familiar with Norwegian history, that's like the Congressional Medal of Honor for her efforts as a rector or principal to force the government to allow Sámi children to learn in their own language. And she succeeded. She was a huge force in, not alone, but she was a huge leader in that major accomplishment. So, starting about 40, 50 years ago, Sámi children began to learn in Sámi, and they also broadcast TV and the radio in that region in Sámi language. And just to be completely correct about things that we're talking about Northern Sámi, there at one time were 9 different Sámi languages, and there's only a few left. And one of the photos in the exhibit is of a man who, when you listen to his audio, when you scan the QR code on your phone and listen to him speak to you through your phone, he's speaking in Norwegian because he's one of 1,000 people left that still speak what's called Southern Sámi, not Northern Sámi, but Southern Sámi. And he doesn't like to speak it. Again, it's this cultural stigma that was imposed on them by sort of colonial power, you might say. And so that's the answer about learning in their own languages.
Thank you, Randall. That was a really great answer. I think there's another question.
Yeah. Hi, Randall. Thank you so much for telling us about that portrait. That was actually one of the most impactful that I found in the exhibit here. And in the vein of protecting culture, I love that you call out the Sámi language. I'm actually curious to know if Google Translate has Sámi. That would be a breakthrough. We need that, as do the Native American languages, and that's how we're trying to preserve them. But in that vein of protecting culture, I'm also curious about how climate change has affected the Sámi people and preserving their culture. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about your experience with climate change and what those people, they're in many ways the canary in the coal mine about this climate change issue. And so I wondered if you had an experience with that in taking your photographs.
Yes, I mean, that was a central issue. That's what really got me interested in the Sámi people. Was here I was reporting on the impact of climate change in the Arctic. I saw what its impacts were on the mammals and the avian life and the plant life and the marine life. And then here I was in the middle of this, and I'm seeing these people in unusual costumes, so to speak, and herding reindeer. And I started getting curious, and I pursued this project, and I discovered that one of the main things that's happening, there are a lot of things that are endangering their cultural survival, but one of the really big things is climate change. And how does that affect? Well, under normal historical circumstances, the kind of snow you get that far north is very powdery, what we like to call powder. And it's easiest for reindeer to paw through the deep snow when it's minus 40 Celsius. And they get to the lichen and grasses beneath the snow and they can eat. But what's been happening in the last 15, 20 years is that they get these freeze thaw, these sudden warm stretches that there's heavy rain, that it freezes and gradually makes the forage inaccessible to the reindeer. So it's costing the lives of their livestock, and it's incredibly expensive to feed them, because we're talking about huge herds of, 2,000-3,000 animals. It's hard to feed them, and they're out in the wild. So that's how it's changing. Plus, the landscape in some of these towns where I was, it used to be all tundra, and now there are trees growing. Short trees, but still, it's having a big impact. Climate change.
Thank you, Randall.
Did you have any language communication problems while you were working on this project? And if so, what did you do about it?
Well, I'm used to this because I travel worldwide in many cultures where I don't speak the languages. I speak a few languages, but I don't speak Sámi. And every situation is different. But I will say that the young people all speak English. But you asked about what's their primary language. They are taught in Sámi in school. They're also taught in Norwegian. I suppose in Sweden and Finland they're taught in those languages as well. And but Norway is probably the most progressive in addressing the concerns of the Sámi people. And now I'm losing my train of thought with this. You asked, can you remind me where we were headed?
She had asked if you had encountered difficulty with the language barrier, and if so, what you did with it.
So the young people speak the perfect English, no problem, and a lot of adults do. But for the older people, I needed, for example, the Abelhetta Eriksson, the woman I mentioned who sits there on the couch with her King Olaf Award beside her. She speaks not a word of English, and her son translated for me, and that was often necessary, that somebody else would, a friend or a relative would be there and translate for me. But the audio that you should be able to hear if you scan the QR codes under the photo IDs, half and half. Half of them are in Sámi, and half are in English, and there's one in Norwegian. The gentleman speaks Southern Sámi, but chose not to speak that language. And in the exhibit hall, you should see 3 handsome booklets that are transcription translation booklets, so that when you listen to any of these people speak, you can immediately go to their picture and read what if it's in another language such as Sámi or Norwegian, you can read what they're saying.
Thank you, Randall.
Hello, my name is Zoe, and I'm really grateful for your work and your caring.
Thank you.
On the topic of language, the Sámi people have an extraordinary musical tradition called yoiking, a kind of singing, to use an American word. And I'm wondering if you encountered any of that in your time there, if you could share a little bit.
Yeah, and Trisha, I don't know, do you have the video looping on a monitor there yet, or is that still to come?
We do not have a video of it online, no.
Okay, well, just to remind you, there's that 14-minute video that's, Norway House produced with me, and you'll hear people yoiking in that. But in lieu of that, since that's not the case tonight, when you go to look at the picture, for example, of the herdsman who's sitting there with a painting that he did on his knee. I'm trying to remember his name. Peters? No. Anyway, there's a picture of a herdsman, and he's in his sitting room, and he's got a painting on an oil painting that he's holding that he himself did. And he's a painter and a poet, and he's a yoiker. And in the audio, again, if you scan it with your cell phone and, the photo ID below that photo, you'll hear him yoiking. And yes, I encountered it. In fact, the way I got involved with the Sámi, as I mentioned earlier, was that Smithsonian sent me on assignment to cover the Sámi Easter Festival, which is all about yoiking competition. And so that's when I first heard it. That was 2015.
I was wondering, is the Sámi Parliament have real power, and are they on equal standing with the other parliaments in Scandinavia and accepted as fully legitimate at this time?
Well, they're funded by the national government, the Norwegian version of it, Sámi team, as it's called. Do they have real power? They have regional power for things that affect only that region. But in terms of, for example, this controversy with the copper mining, all they could do is say, we don't want it, we're opposed to it, and take it to the national parliament, and then representatives there made a decision that they would allow the copper mining, despite the objections of the Sámi parliament. So I don't know if that gives you a good answer, but that's how that sits.
Thank you. So we have one more question here for you.
Yeah, hi.
Just kidding. We have two more questions, Randall.
I'm in no rush. It's okay. I've got a whole evening of sitting with candles and no air conditioning. So
I was going to ask about the air conditioning in St. Louis, actually. Thank you, Randall. Your exhibit and your words are wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Here in Oregon, we have a local indigenous tribe that has a radio station, and they play their music and language programs. It just made me think, are you aware of broadcast media that can tie together the Sámi people into their radio and television broadcasts?
Yeah. The state NRK, for those of you who are familiar with Norway, NRK is the national broadcast system of Norway, and they have dedicated both radio and television channels and stations in Sámi, and they have there's actually a photo in that transcription book. You don't see it hanging on the wall, but there's a photo of a woman sitting with a gigantic stuffed animal, like a kid's have, a stuffed animal, not taxidermy, but a stuffed baby reindeer, a cute little thing on her knee, and that's the name of that character is Bindabangmash, and it's from a children's program that she hosts or did host. It's all in Sámi, and she, if you listen to the QR code audio from her, you'd have to go to the transcription books that are sitting there. There are 3 of them in the gallery. And if you QR code her and listen to her, she starts out by singing the yoik of Bindabangmash, the little baby reindeer that goes with the children's program. And then she ends up singing her childhood yoik. And the thing about yoiks, for those who aren't familiar with it, it's a channeling of, it could be an inanimate or an animate object, a tree, a rock, a mountain, a landscape, a person, an animal, and everybody gets their own childhood yoik that some relative says, well, this is what I think fits you. And that's okay to sing, but once they become an adult, they get a second yoik that somebody gifts them. I don't know if I said that clearly, but it's a gift to them from another relative or friend. And that goes with them for life. And they can never sing their own yoik. It would be absolutely taboo to sing your own yoik. You never do that. Because they're usually complimentary. So you don't want to be so brash as to sing about yourself. But others will sing your yoik. And you can hear that yoik if you go to her picture. Her name is Heidi Sala, and she's the picture in the transcription book with the baby reindeer on her lap.
My question should be very brief. I was just wondering, Randall, are copies of your photographs available for sale?
Yes, they are. Also at the gallery, what you'll see, I put a desk copy that I we shipped with the photographs of the catalog of the exhibit. And so you can see very small, they are actual photo prints, and that catalog is available for sale. I think I priced it at cost because it would be too expensive otherwise. But those are actual photo prints. I think I priced it at $35 or something. And they can be ordered. There's a little card that's in there, and I don't know how far along you are, Tricia, in setting things up, but that little card tells you how to contact me, and I can put together catalogs for you. So that would be the inexpensive way to get real live photo prints, but they albeit have my signature on the lower right. And the large prints are for sale. I never had anyone request one, so I'd be glad to figure out a pricing on that because they're fairly expensive to produce.
Thank you, Randall. It's me, Tricia, again. We're twisting so you can see my face again. I just wanted to thank you so much for joining us, and we're so grateful that we were able to have your exhibit here. It just tackles so many different themes and so simultaneously and seamlessly, and I know that we're all very grateful that we're able to host it. So I wanted to thank you for that, and thank you for your time.
Well, it was a pleasure, and all great, terrific questions from everyone. Thank you so much for being so thoughtful and perceptive. I really enjoyed talking with all of you.
Yeah, of course. And I think a great exhibit, in my professional opinion, it brings so many connections. And since we've had this exhibit up, I've received lots of emails, and I know that we've gotten lots of calls about it. And I've met with a few people here in Portland who have heard about the exhibit and are interested in getting involved in some type of way. And so I think that really is a testament to how, how engaging your exhibit is, and also how great of a fit it is for Nordic Northwest's mission. And we really wouldn't be able to put on programs like this or put on exhibits like this without all the people here and also online. And we so appreciate all of your support because, because people show up and because they support us and our members and come to our programs, it really does help. And it's just such a great thing to be able to see faces here. And I know that all of you online as well. So if anyone we have upcoming programs as well. We have some hybrid ones. So if you're ever interested in attending more programs, you can look at our website. Our next hybrid program is on August 20th. It's a concert. So you can come in person, and you can also tune in online. So it's on August 20th. It starts at 7 p.m. and you can sign up on our website. And Randall, I think we're gonna let you go and hopefully be safe in your power outage. And thank you again so much for your time.
Thank you. And I just want to thank you, Tricia, and thank Nordic Northwest and Nordic House for hosting this exhibit and for being so gracious.
Yay! Thank you, Randall.
Thank you so much. I'll sign off now before we lose complete power. Well, we don't have power, but anything else comes crashing through the roof.
Thank you, Randall.
All right. Take care. Good night now.